Welcome back to Haunted and Historic Australia and our criminal cutthroats and convicts episodes with the Sydney Park serial killer series. In episode 6, we learn what happened in Moore Park to Daisy Maud Kearney. For most of us, Moore Park was where we spent countless hours getting samples, running through animal and show bag pavilions, making memories at the Royal Easter Show in Sydney, before it was moved to Olympic Park. Then Moore Park was an entertainment hub for Fox Studios, now renamed Disney Studios, for even more entertainment. Not much was different in 1920s, Moore Park being predominantly parkland with very few houses and even a golf course made it easier for evil to fester, and unfortunately, where tragically our 6th woman, Daisy, met her end 2 years before Rebecca's murder. Daisy was in her mid-30s, had had a failed marriage, now separated from a husband. She was trying to find herself again, staying at a boarding house or lodging house run by a Mrs. Clement and her family, who said she was the life of the household, upbeat, and despite her own troubles was happy to help out with other boarders and her family where she could. On the evening of May 12, 1921, she was particularly cheerful as she was going out that afternoon with a new man she'd met, living a few doors down in another lodging. Daisy told Mrs. Clements she would be back by 9 p.m. That was the last time Mrs. Clements would see her alive. After 2 days not hearing from Daisy, Mrs. Clements rang the police and Daisy became a missing person. Despite interviewing many people, they found no leads into her disappearance. It was the following year, in mid-October, police received a call from a woman stating that there was a body buried in the Moore Park golf links. She gave the name of her neighbour, and they went over and picked up James Elliscombe, a park tout or pickpocketer, bag snatcher, who admitted he was at Moore Park on May 12th in 1921 with a friend of his, a labourer named Edgar Reed. He told police he would have come in himself and told them. After telling the story to his wife, she demanded that he come forward or she would. However, the loud argument disturbed the neighbour and she got in first. He began a terrible tale to police of what he believed to be the murder of Daisy Kearney. Also, he may have witnessed her being buried in the Moore Park golf links. The police took him to a spot he believed she was buried. Digging a few feet, they found nothing. He mentioned his friend Edgar Reed may know the spot better. After picking up Edgar Reed, they proceeded back to the golf links and began to dig in the sand bunker on an area Reed had stated. Between the 5th and 6th greens, under 4.5 feet of sand, they found a body, mostly skeleton in woman's clothing, in a seated position with one leg up. Buried with her was some jewellery and a few other personal effects. From here, they took her body to the morgue, and police sat Elliscombe and Reed down to get their full statements. Elliscombe told police he and Reed were in the park of the night, 12th of May. They were sitting down and heard a clapping sound, followed by 2 claps. They walked toward where the noise was coming from. The touts saw a man bending over a woman on the golf course, her clothes pulled up and skin showing. As they got closer, the man quickly pulled the clothes back down again. The touts backed away, still kept an eye on them, and then they saw the man pick up the woman and carry her up a hill. Looking through binoculars that they used in the park at night themselves, they followed the man over the hill and to where he laid the woman down in a sand bunker. The man noticed them spying him and yelled out, "Who are you watching?" The touts yelled back. "We're not watching anyone. We just knocked off work at the glassworks." The man yelled back. "That's all right. I thought you were watching me." The man then leant over his woman and said, "Are you all right, dearie?" The woman attempted to mumble something back. Concerned, the touts approached as the man bent over again. Noticing them, he got annoyed and walked over to them, pulled out his wallet, and then paid them both a pound note to bugger off. They took the money and began to walk away. Reed called out, "What's wrong with her, mate? I hope there's nothing wrong with her." The man quickly responded, "Yeah, she's all right." The touts walked away, but still were suspicious and hung around nearby. Sometime afterwards, the men returned to the area for a closer look. The man had gone. They felt the ground near the sand bunker where the woman was. Reed touched the grass next to the sand and found his hand wet. Lighting a match, there was blood, an earring and a tortoiseshell comb. Reed kept these items for a few months before destroying them. Elscombe and Reed both visited the site separately after that night, possibly feeling guilt. Elscombe stated on one occasion there was cattle manure over the location she was buried, and Reed stated that he saw a shovel nearby shortly after the night. They both got together some point later and discussed this, and decided that they were going to go to the spot with a shovel and dig up the area. When they arrived late at night and undetected, they attempted to dig the woman up. Well, they suspected she was there. They didn't know for sure, but they got about 2 feet down and got too scared that they'd be blamed for the murder, so they took off. The police detained the men while they continued with their investigation. The coroner believed from the condition and decomposition of the body that it had been buried for about a year and a half. There were fractures to the woman's skull along her left side, indicating that she was hit over the head, but oddly not robbed. So what was the motive? Sadly, due to decomposition, it was difficult to see if there had been any sexual assault. The clothing still on, including stockings, may have meant that no sexual contact was made, or the man dressed the body after the fact, after he murdered her. Police had already suspected who the skeleton belonged to, but in order to get a positive ID, they called in her sister, Mrs. Elizabeth Murphy, to confirm it. She did this based on clothing and jewellery that she knew belonged to her sister. Sadly, Daisy had been murdered and buried under the ground for a year and a half. Her family had some sort of closure, but who killed Daisy and why? Immediately they contacted her husband and took him in for questioning. The 40-year-old shearer, sometimes wharfie, named Patrick Kearney, could he have murdered his wife as she had left him? It came out that Daisy was separated from her husband. They'd had a child together, and for some reason or another, the relationship didn't work, and the child remained with the father. The daughter, in the trial, as we would find out, explained how her mother was a drunk and often came home and threw things at her father never laying a hand on her as far as she knew. Patrick Kearney had an alibi and he was released shortly afterwards. Next, it was John Carl Jensen, a 31-year-old van man or delivery driver who was the new man she had been seeing at the time of her death. He had been previously interviewed by police about her disappearance, but without any evidence or a body, they had nothing to pin on him. He had been witnessed on the night with the victim leaving the premises, but said she left him at 9 p.m. to go home. He never saw her again. He stuck to this story until he was picked out of a lineup. So, clean cut, right? Jensen arrested and case closed. But no, it wasn't clear cut. How? Why, you ask? Well, there were a couple of things. The park touts, Elliscombe and Reed, both picked a man out of the lineup. Elliscombe went and tapped Jensen immediately, stating that he was the man he saw that night with the woman who we know was Daisy. But Reed picked out Patrick Kearney, her husband, out of the lineup, stating that he was sure he was the man that he saw that night of the murder of Daisy. So what now? There were other witnesses that stated they saw her with many men. Jensen's friends at the trial came forward too and stated that they'd met Daisy and she was nothing but a drunk. Many people stated that she was nasty toward Jensen, and the admission from her daughter stating that her mother was a drunk didn't help Daisy's reputation and the case for being closed at all. Well, Jensen was acquitted. They couldn't pin it on him because there were too many different stories, nor could they pin it on the husband for the same reason. Therefore, Daisy's case was never closed. Her murderer never brought to justice. Many believe that she did it to herself by putting herself in awful circumstances, which is pretty rough. No one has the right to kill you, not your husband or your lover, or anyone for that matter. Who really killed Daisy Maud Kearney will always be a mystery. Could it have been her husband, angry that she'd left him and the daughter and gone off with other men? Could it have been Jensen, who was noted as being very jealous? Or could it have been someone totally irrelevant, someone preying on women, alone at night, through parks, a Sydney Park serial killer? If you like this episode, please give us a like, subscribe, and of course, stay tuned for our next episode, where we have a look at a woman murdered in 1915 by an absolute monster, when we return with the Sydney Park Serial Killer, Episode 7.